Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Door series number 43. It's Wednesday, April the 28th. Hope everyone's having a great morning. And I realize most of y'all will be watching this later, but thank you for being here for those that are here live. Um, Always appreciate questions, anything that you would like us to talk about. We're happy to do that as long as we feel like we're kind of in our realm of expertise. Today, I was going to talk about one of the strategies that we use with our clients as therapists, but also things that we try to impart to our parents. Um, Storytelling is it goes dated all the way back to before there was even written word. We conveyed things, values, just lessons through storytelling, and those got passed down from generation to generation. And so it's something that is just kind of woven into the fabric of our being. And the way that we learn is through storytelling. And so we try to use that technique, that idea, anyway, to relay some of the things that we're trying to teach. So whether it's anxiety, maybe the shoulder technique, or even the decision tree, just kind of ways to think about circumstances and look for growth opportunities for the brain, especially with our kids and our teenagers that we work with, but also with adults. But the way that you do that and the way that we do that is we try to really get to know you as a person. What are your things? What are your interests? What are your stories? A lot of times I work with either kids that play video games or either athletes. And so I try to relate the things that, we're talking about from a clinical, expertise place of trying to relate that to things that they can relate to through their own stories. So rather than, telling them a story, generic story, or even another story about something that's unrelated to them as far as their interests and their hobbies, it tends not to have the impact. I'm sure you see that if you're a parent, it's talking about things that you did back in your day, the way that you were raised, the stories that you went through, even the stories maybe you had as a teenager, and you're trying to relate to them as a teenager. A lot of that stuff is often just kind of lost on them because they don't have an anchor to draw from to be able to understand and relate to that story. But they certainly understand their stories. They understand the stories that of their peer groups, whether that is through video games or even social media. But they get it when you use their stories to tell the thing and teach the thing that you're trying to get them to learn. So I'll give you an example. A lot of times, the kids that we work with, they're wanting to be high achievers. They're wanting to, get the most out of it. Some of them have concerns about, what college they're going to go to, how they're doing in school. Sometimes they even think like, they're not getting as much done as they could. And so I relate that, especially in maybe this case, with someone that, they're a runner. And I relate it in a way that because I can relate to running because I love running, but most of the time you're going to run slow to run fast. And most days you're going to feel like you're not making gains when you're doing those slow days. And those are meant on purpose because they bring great gains overall when it comes to trying to peak for a race. And so they relate to that some days are going to be slow days for their work when they're doing schoolwork, and sometimes it's going to feel like they're not doing anything, even though they did all their work, they got everything done, but maybe they didn't take a test, maybe they didn't take a quiz, maybe they didn't see some measured progress towards this ultimate goal of maybe making an A or B and then ultimately trying to get good grades to get into college. So you have to use their information, the things that they relate to. You can do this a lot. You got to understand the video games that they're playing. You got to understand the social media platforms, excuse me, that they're on, so you can relate to their world, and that way you can impart the technique, or even as a parent, like the teaching lesson that you're trying to pull in. And you can, there's value systems within these video games. There's cultures within these video games of way and norms, the way that you operate, and you have to be able to take specific parts of how that game works, how it works within that culture, to be able to relay that family value or even that clinical technique that you're trying to get across to them. So you have to be creative and think about what is the story, what is the storytelling that I'm going to use here to get this across to the client or to your kid so they'll understand and relate, at least understand what you're trying to say. They may not agree with it, but at least if you have some commonality, some understanding about the thing that you're talking about, at least you have something you can talk about rather than, them just tuning you out, either as a therapist or a parent because, you're trying to tell them this thing and they just don't get it. They don't really care about it. So it's a really good technique to pull them in and pique their interest and then relay it to them in a way that they completely understand it. And they understand it. They're going to understand it better than you when you're talking about running or video games or social media or any of those things. But at least now you have a platform that you can pull from and continue to share your stories and continue to use techniques to try to teach them some of the things that you're working on with them as a clinician to maybe help them with their anxiety or their depression, maybe even their oppositional defiance disorder, because sometimes we see that with some of our very determined youth here at the practice. But also, as a parent, you're going to come up with that resistance because kids and teenagers are supposed to show resistance. You just got to learn how to tackle it rather than continuously just to kind of set limits and you're not seeing any progress from that. So you've got to get on the same page with them, and you do that through going into their world and trying to relay all that information. So hopefully that helps. Just use storytelling. Think creatively. Try to get out of the patterns that you're in if they are unsuccessful when either as a therapist or as a parent, and figure out how you can get this point across in a much more entertaining storytelling way. I hope you all have a great day. It's a wonderful week. It's warm outside. Hopefully you get outside. We're getting outside with our clients for sure. And we will see you next Wednesday for Behind the Door. Thanks. Have a great day.